You're listening to the Doctor Is In podcast, brought to you by MartinClinic.com. During the episode, the doctors share a lot of information. As awesome as the info may be, it is not intended to diagnose, cure, treat, or prevent any disease. It's strictly for informational purposes.
Hello, I'm Dr. Martin Jr.
I'm Dr. Martin Sr.
And this is the Doctor Is In podcast, and this is episode 205. Now, I've been away for a while. You've been on your own. I've been listening. I've been critiquing.
You've been listening?
Taking notes, critiquing, checking your references, doing it all. But I'm back now after a while. No fanfare either. Nobody messaged us and saying, hey, where's Junior? Nobody missed anything.
Well, you know, it's always interesting when you're doing it alone. I'm always worried whether I'm actually recording or not. That's always the biggest thing because you never know until Brandy, who is our producer back there, she does the listening. But I can't tell if I'm recording. So anyway, everything worked out good. It was good.
Yeah, it was.
Well, you were busy all summer. You weren't around to do any podcasts.
Yeah. So now I got a new agent. I fired my agent. I brought in a new one. We've settled all the contract demands, and so I'm back at least for one episode until we'll see what happens next week. But we got a lot of fascinating stuff to cover. A lot of things to go through. We'll spend most of our time talking about a study that just came out. That is fascinating and it answers a question that people ask us all the time. So we'll talk about that. But before we get into that, we'll just chat a little bit about something that we've kind of talked about throughout the summer, which is there's a massive almost suppression going on in the internet space when it comes to Google search results, YouTube results, right? There's a lot of people complaining that these companies are only letting you see what it's going to sound conspiracy theory here, but that they're fixing what shows up in the searches that people are having when they Google something or when they go on YouTube. And they're now favoring more medical, more hospitals, more WebMDs. And people have been wondering about that. Well, a study came out that looked at the data, and see, Google goes through these massive updates in their algorithms every so often, and they came out with a big one, and then they came out with another one again in August of 15. So really what this study did is they looked at traffic to all the different websites prior to this update and then after, and it's amazing. It's actually terrifying because what's happening is that it's a fact, they've suppressed a lot of this information that people usually get in favor of more medical thinking. Yeah. And again, so it didn't matter if your page had more traffic, more reads, it didn't matter that you would get punished based on, whatever that hidden algorithm is. And then they would only show, what they want you to see. And again, rather than letting the individual decide what they want to read or what their interest is, Google's telling you, they're going to banish things to the second page of Google, which is the second page of Google, to be honest, is kind of like every Western when they have that tumbleweed blown across nobody goes that far to look for anything. That's too much work, right? We just don't do it. So that first page and that first 4 or 5 results in Google is everything when it comes to online businesses. Now, I'll give you some examples just to give you an idea. Yeah. And I went through this with my most of our staff. I showed them this. We did a video chat and I Googled a health topic in Google, and then I did the same thing in Bing, which nobody uses, but that's the Microsoft version, and then the same thing in a couple other to show the vast differences that come up. Google, the top search results are all medical, WebMD, Cleveland Clinic, all these kind of things. Yeah. And for the most part, the articles are boring because it's just they're just giving you like facts. They're not even written by WebMD, aren't written by MDs. They're written by health reporters, but it doesn't matter. I mean, the results they're shocking, right? And so I just want to quickly go over a couple of stats because this is fascinating, and it goes to show you again what we're up against when you go outside the box, what you're up against, right? Yeah. So everybody listening to this would be familiar, for example, with Dr. Axe, right? Dr. Axe website, they write on a ton of topics, and generally for the longest time in almost any health condition, they would show up first or second in a lot of traffic searches. Well, Dr. Axe since April 15, 2018 to August 15, 2009, when that algorithm change took place, Dr. Axe has lost 91.62% of visibility, negative 91%. And it's true, if you go Google a health topic on Bing and you go Google a health topic on Google, Bing, he'll show up first or second every time. When he's not even the top page, like he's banished to the second page on Google.
And obviously it's on purpose, right?
100% it's on purpose, because they would deem his information less credible. And again, they enter into partnerships with drug companies, whatever, right? There's these partnerships. So now all these hospital websites have gotten more credibility. YouTube, the same thing. You can have a boring video on high blood pressure show up at the top because it's from the Cleveland Clinic, and the guy speaking puts you to sleep, and he's talking to other scientists. Yeah. And it's got 15,000 views. And you can have another video by another doctor down at the bottom of the search results on the first page that's got like 2 million views. And again, because they want you to get the information from the Cleveland Clinic rather than getting it from this other person. So they're censoring the news. That's what it is. They're telling you what they want you to see.
Yeah.
And which tells us, again, we're as consumers and as people looking out for our own health, unfortunately, we're being manipulated from a search level, and that you control the flow of information. You really control what you read, and it's like that's what's happening, right? So that's just one example. I'll give you another example. Dr. McCullough, again, well-known alternative health guy, right? And he's under attack on a whole bunch of different things. He's had a minus 84% visibility since the algorithm. Again, his articles just won't show up. If people are searching, for example, vitamin D, his articles won't show up. They just won't show up. You'll see articles from the Cleveland Clinic or the WebMD.
Even though you might have 2 million hits on it, right?
Yeah, even though, and that's the problem, right? There are a lot of these big time, for example, like I'll just read a couple other ones because there's some big ones that are out there that have absolutely just got hammered. And I'll give you the opposite. Mayo Clinic, since this algorithm, they've had an increase of 60% visibility. WebMD has had an increase of 30% visibility, and everybody else has been hit. I'll just read a couple of them, for example. Like this other guy, Mark's Daily Apple, is down 65%, and he writes from a paleo point of view, and he's got a lot of good articles, but he's down almost 70%. Dr. Wiles down 65%. Wellness Mama was a big one, 65%. Mind Body Green, another big one, 55%. But the biggest guys that got hit the hardest was Dr. Axe at 91%. And, Mercola's 84%, a couple of 93%. They're getting killed. And it's unfortunate because that's how people do research. One of the biggest irritants that I see, and I see this shared on Facebook every once in a while, and I see it shared on social media. Some doctor will have a picture in his waiting room that says, "Don't confuse your Google search with my medical degree." Like, for somehow they're so special. They got a medical degree, so therefore they're the only authority whenever it comes. Don't come in there, do research on yourself. Don't look things up. Heaven forbid you look up something on the internet, right? And you go and say, "Hey, listen, what's all this stuff about statin drugs not working?" Oh, no, don't confuse your Google search for my medical degree, right? Don't confuse. How dare you? And that's idiotic, right? We live in a time where there's so much information out there, and really everything's a community, and we all learn off each other. For example, in our Martin Clinic private Facebook group, the contribution from the people in the group is awesome. I scroll through that stuff all the time, read it. Good articles are sharing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Good information, right? It's like a group crowd think. And that, people have experiences with stuff. Hey, anybody try? Yes, this worked well. That stuff is invaluable. That's the power of internet, is the connection. Now you have this going on where they're trying to censor, they're trying to slow down the information, especially, again, if you don't fit in the box, if you think differently, you're going to get punished.
Yeah.
Google's going to punish you. Facebook punishes it, right? Like, there was an article that was shared on Facebook everywhere, even into our private group, and Facebook deemed it fake news. So they took it down across, it's been shared, I think, 1 million times, took it down across everything. And, they sent us a notification saying that we removed this post because one person deemed it fake news, and therefore it's fake news. Now, we didn't write it, obviously. It was written by somebody else, and, but it doesn't matter. It was, that's terrifying that they, who decides these things? But anyways, that's what we're up against when we talk outside the box. Now, you and I, we're not even really that controversial in any way. We talk a lot about eating, and we talk about supplements, and that's just what we do. We like to present as much information as possible for people. But just to let you know what's going on, what you're starting to read on the internet has been curated for you, filtered. They want you to see what they want you to read. So sometimes you have to switch server or switch search engines. Sometimes you have to do a little bit more digging, but it's crazy. Like it's absolutely unfortunate. But anyways, that's a long
and they have a lot of power, eh? When you think of it.
Well, they can, yeah. Because again, you just search a topic and you just read what's given to you. You'll maybe click on 2 or 3 links or whatever, and they're telling you what to read. So, but that happened over the summer, and that came out. That study, looking at the data, came out, and some people wrote about it, but it probably didn't show up anywhere. But people are just like, hey, listen, this is censorship, whether you like the information or not.
Yeah.
You know how people decide what's relevant or not? They either read it or they don't. At the end of the day, make it fairly available to everybody and let people make their own decisions. Yeah. But they don't, and really at the end of the day, that's the bottom line. They don't trust you to make the right decision. They want to tell you what to do rather than give you the facts and then make the decision. So, but that's where we're at now. So I just wanted to share that because you and I talked about this over the summer a little bit, and we never really had a chance to share that with everybody, but that's what's going on. All right, let's change gears a little bit and let's talk about the one study that came out because it's fascinating. People have been told for a long time, really came out, Oprah's trainer, I remember years ago, came out and did an interview saying, if you want to lose weight, you got to eat 6 times a day, 6 small meals a day. And that gets the engine, it says.
Yeah, metabolism.
Yeah, it's like stoking the fire.
Yeah.
That somehow if you eat 6 times a day, your metabolism is always going and you're going to lose weight. That's the best way to do it. And there are a lot of people who they'll eat 6 meals a day and they'll start to lose weight. But we'll talk about why that is in a second. This study was done. And before we even do that, one more thing. One of the complaints that you hear when it comes to low carb all the time is, well, listen, if all things are equal, if calories are equated, right? You hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Calories are equated, you can lose, there's a lot of things you can do to lose weight. I know I'm not disagreeing with that, but that's what they always say. Oh, low carb's not better. If all calories are equal and the person eats the same amount, they eat low carb or whatever. And even though studies don't agree with that, but it doesn't matter. That's what you hear all the time. So this study was well done in a sense that it had 2 groups of people, diabetics, by the way. So two groups of diabetics. One group ate 3 meals a day. The other group ate 6 meals a day. And they had the same calories and macros, same amount of protein, same amount of fat, same amount of carbohydrates. So the only difference between the 2 groups was not in the types of foods, the amount of foods. The only difference was the amount of times they ate in a day.
Yeah.
And that's why this is interesting, because you and I have said this many times. When you eat is not as important, but it's very important when you eat as well. So what did this study show? Well, the group that ate 3 meals a day, I'll just read you the conclusion of the study. Here's what they found. So the people that were eating 3 meals a day, in contrast to those that were eating 6 meals a day, led to weight loss. So they lost weight, significant reduction in insulin, better appetite control, better blood sugars, and they needed less insulin in the day, which is pretty much everything that you want to go right when you're trying to change the way you eat is pretty much that.
Yeah.
So most diabetics would do better if they never snacked. And we've said this forever. You and I, we've talked about this forever. If they can eat bigger meals and snack less, their blood sugars would be better, regardless of what they're eating in a sense. Yeah. Now, you combine that with bringing the carbs down, the crappy carbs, bringing down those processed fats and all that. That's how you reverse, or that's how you treat diabetes. Right there. They've shown it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, again, people always say, now, okay, what about people who they eat 6 meals a day and they lose weight? Well, I'll tell you what's going on. There are 2 types of people in the real world when it comes to dieting. There's 2 types of people. Those that are metabolically healthy and those that are metabolically unhealthy. A person that has a normal blood sugar reaction, a normal insulin reaction to food.
And do you know what the stats are on that? Do you remember that? I think we talked about that a long time ago.
Yes, very low.
12% of the population, 88% are metabolically challenged, where they like you said, their insulin's high, or they have metabolic syndrome, they have high blood pressure, they have usually high levels of uric acid, and all of the above. And only 12%, they say, of the population, 12% is actually metabolically good. So those people, and they often get all the ink.
Well,
because
that's what
they
I mean.
say, well, I can eat I eat 6 times a day. It
Yeah,
don't
and I
bother
lost
me.
weight.
Yeah.
And that the reality is that's not how most people, they're not metabolically healthy. What happens with the average person, like you said, the great majority of people, is they have an exaggerated insulin response when they eat. Now, insulin, it does a lot of things, obviously, and insulin is very important for you. But at the end of the day, insulin is what they call a food hormone, meaning when you eat food, insulin is secreted. Makes sense, right? You're eating food, it's broken down, your blood sugar levels spike. They go up. After every meal, your blood sugar levels go up. That's what happens when you eat food. Yeah. Makes sense. That food is broken down to glucose. And glucose is meant for fast-acting fuel. You either need it or you don't need it. If you don't need it right now, you have to do something with it. You can't keep it in your blood because it's toxic. High blood sugar levels dangerous, and low blood sugar levels dangerous. So you eat food, you got a bunch of glucose in there. If you're not using it right then and there, you have to do something. So your body takes it, secretes insulin. Insulin then partitions, it gets rid of the glucose, in the blood. That's what happens.
Yeah.
For a normal person, the average person, the great majority of people that are metabolically damaged when they eat food and their blood sugar levels spike, well, their blood sugar levels may even spike abnormally. They secrete a ton of insulin. So they're always in storage. They're taking stuff. They're always moving into storage. If you're eating 6 times a day and you're always secreting insulin, guess what's happening? It's not good. You're creating an unhealthy insulin response in your body because every time you eat, you have to secrete insulin. And if you're metabolically damaged, you're going to secrete a lot more insulin than you need to because chances are you're either insulin resistant or your body overreacts. So you pump a ton of insulin out. And then you take all that glucose you just ate, and it goes into storage. You're storing it. And if your muscles are full, and if you haven't depleted your glycogen in your muscles, they're full of storage. There's no room. Then your liver's full. You make more. You put it in fat.
Yeah.
And you can always make more fat cells.
Yeah.
Well, generally speaking, now which is why you and I always say that obesity, fatty liver, those are defense mechanisms your body has in order for you not to be diabetic.
It's amazing. We used to talk about that a lot, about how the body has the ability to keep you away from diabetes. So if you're a diabetic, just think of how many roadblocks you had to go through in your body to become a diabetic.
And some people can't store fat the same as somebody else, so they get diabetic and they don't even have any kind of obesity going on.
Exactly.
They got fatty liver and they're not even overweight. It's because they don't have the ability to make fat cells to store the glucose. So then their blood sugar levels get out of whack very quickly because they can't just take it and shove it into their liver. It's full. Yeah. They got a fatty liver, and then their fat cells are full.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. So when you eat 6 times a day and you got a blood sugar issue, especially this study, and there's other ones that have been done in the past, but once again, this is showing that eating 6 times a day for the average person is not good. Now, you and I have said this, and research shows this, blood sugar is a lagging indicator.
Yeah.
Meaning, when you start to have blood sugar issues, if your blood sugar levels are starting to get abnormally high or they're on the high end of normal, but they're climbing up, you've had a problem for years, maybe even a decade before that. You've had an insulin problem. You've over-secreted insulin for a long time. You've been storing, right? There's a lot of things that goes on. High insulin, you're creating a ton of inflammation. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes.
Oxidative damage.
All that stuff, right? So by the time that your sugar levels are actually a problem and you become a diabetic, there's been something going on metabolically for a long time. And now you get to the point, all right, so if you're listening and you're not diabetic, but you have insulin resistance, and we have on our website information on how do you know if you have insulin resistance, some of the more classic signs of that. But most people listening have an issue with high insulin. You can have that for 10 years plus, sometimes shorter, depending on the individual. You can have elevated insulin before your blood sugars become a mess. So even if your blood sugar, even if you're not diabetic, eating 3 times a day or snacking less is still the best thing you can do for yourself. Even if your blood sugar levels are, oh yeah, I got my sugar levels that they're tested, they're normal. Their insulin may be the problem. I mean, for a lot of people, that's what it is. Yeah. So for the average person listening to this podcast, which is why in our serial killers course that we talk about our program, Snack less. Eat bigger meals. You're better off to eat bigger meals and snack less than you are to eat breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, supper, snack. You're eating all day. Insulin's pumping all day. Your eating window's huge. That's just not for the average person. Leave that to fitness people who don't have metabolically damaged metabolism and they got normal response. They'll mess it up for later in life.
Yeah.
But leave that to them. For you that's listening, eat less frequently for sure. Frequency matters. This study shows it, and previous ones as well. Frequency matters. Eat less often. And, we talk a lot about fasting and
intermittent fasting,
all that kind of stuff, right? Those kind of things are great for keeping insulin low. So there's a lot of things to do, but we wanted to share the study with you because it's a question that we get asked. We get asked a lot about snacking. We get asked a lot about these things. And what's funny? The people that didn't snack in the study, they were less hungry. They had less cravings. That makes sense. The blood sugar levels are not going up and down like crazy. It may take a couple of days to adjust to that because you're used to eating a snack. You're used to this. But again, when you stick with it and you eat less, you eat 3 square meals a day, you're going to be less hungry because your blood sugar levels are going to be less of a mess. They're going to be less up and down yo-yo spiking, less cravings. And I think part of the cravings as well, aside from blood sugar, is, again, when you have high insulin, you have high cortisol. And cortisol is bringing up your blood sugar. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes when you keep insulin low as well. So it's a fascinating study. So how many times a day should you eat? Well, 3 meals. If you're not fasting, 3 square meals a day. If you're fasting, 2 square meals a day is ideal. Or just remember, if you're metabolically damaged, eat less frequently. No question. And a lot of research in anti-aging shows when you eat less frequently and less food, you create less inflammation, you live longer.
Yeah.
So, again, we live in a day and age. Who benefits? I sound like a conspiracy theorist today. I should have brought some tinfoil for this episode and just put it on my head because everything I'm talking about is conspiracy theory. It's not a coincidence that the message coming out about eating 6 times a day, come on, who benefits from us eating all day?
Yeah.
Hey, you know what you got to do to lose weight and get healthy? Eat all day. Snack all day. Eat 6 times. Eat 3. I mean, grandparents and all, they eat 3 meals a day. Food industry comes along and says, you know what really works well? Here, it's like a guy pulling you into the alley. Hey, psst, come here. You really want to know the secret to losing weight? You really want to know the secret to getting healthy? No. 3 times a day? Nah, that's for your parents. Yeah. This is the new thing.
The new thing.
You want to get your metabolism rolling.
And that really was a very popular thing.
It was massive.
Think of in the 80s and 90s and, even today. But that was a big, big thing. Anybody that was a guru and was stoke that fire, right? Your body is like a fire. Don't let the fire go out, So.
I know, like it's like a... Well, and that's why it's such a funny thing. But again, the guy was on, I remember watching the interview myself, and I mean, he's not the only one to say this, but he talked about eat breakfast right away. Get up, eat, because it gets that metabolism going. I mean, it does. That's funny. I mean, it gets your insulin going.
Yeah.
It gets your glucose going. It gets your glucagon going. It gets everything going. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and if you're metabolically challenged, which, like I said, almost 90% of the population is in that category. And we can confirm that because we see it in the office. It's incredible, right? I mean, and it has an effect on everything. Like I always teach food. So if you're going to get a lecture, we're always going to get a lecture on food. And that, and the biggest thing, and the way we divide food is not by calories, not by macros, whatever. Not that we don't talk about that. But we talk about how much insulin if you want to be healthy.
Well, from a health perspective, you have to look at each bite as a chemical reaction that takes place. Either that food is going to promote anti-inflammatory healthy living or it's going to promote inflammatory unhealthy living.
Yeah.
Every bite can heal. Every bite can lead to sickness. That's how it works. Now, we're not saying to be perfect. We're not that at all. And in fact, again, if you're metabolically healthy or you're somewhat metabolically healthy and you're not a full diabetic, you don't have to be as strict as a diabetic does.
Yeah.
When you have diabetes and your blood sugar levels are flying out of control, you unfortunately have lost the right to be less strict. You have to, unfortunately, tighten things up considerably because your body overreacts now to everything. When you're a diabetic, you are allergic to crappy carbs.
Yeah.
Sugar, you're allergic to it. It's like an anaphylactic bee sting allergy that goes on in your body when you are a diabetic and you consume sugar. So if you're a diabetic, the research is crystal clear. Eat less often, eat bigger meals, but eat less often, and you'll be better off. That's the data. That's the data. Now, listen, if you want to get your blood pressure up, go follow on social media some of these diabetic clinics, and they post their recipes. It's insane.
Yeah.
They put one up the other day. It was like 80 grams of carbs for breakfast. I'm like, are you trying to cause, like, is it brought to you by the makers of insulin? Like, are they trying to get you to inject 3 times before lunchtime?
Or metformin or whatever.
I remember when we did the radio show, you were off one time and I filled in for you. And I remember one guy calling in, and he was having a hard time in the morning. He said, in the mornings, my blood sugar levels are always up and down, and I got to take insulin. I'm like, well, what do you eat for breakfast? He's like, well, I have toast, I have cereal, and I have some oatmeal. And I'm like, all right, well, I guarantee if you had bacon and eggs, you wouldn't be having the same issue. In fact, I was saying do the bacon and eggs challenge. You won't have the blood sugar levels in the morning if you're doing that. Yeah. But that's, but he was following the advice of a sheet that he got. Again, I think if you take, my tinfoil's coming out. If you take, those, the blue light things that they put over a crime scene, right? If you flash over a room, and you don't want to do that in a hotel room and stuff like that because you don't want to see the stuff that's in there. But the blue light, right, to pick up these things. I think if you took a blue light over these sheets that they get sometimes from dietitians, it would have like the seal underneath it from like the drug company or the food companies, right? Like Kellogg's, their seal would be underneath the paper because how do you give that kind of advice? It's just beyond me. It's beyond me, but it's still being given out there every day. Yeah. And for us saying that, we're the crazy ones. We're the ones that Google's trying to censor.
Yeah, Google don't want to give you the other side.
No, heaven forbid. If it makes sense to cut down on sugar if you're a diabetic, we better suppress your message. We better not get that out there. So we're going to, anyways.
Yeah, has no effect.
No effect. That's right. But anyways, again, this is an episode we wanted to do for a while, and this study came out, so it just gave us an opportunity to talk about that. But again, we're out of time. There's a lot of ways for people to get a hold of us. We would encourage you, if you're not a newsletter subscriber, go to our website, sign up for our newsletters. We share a ton of information in there. You do Facebook Lives all the time.
Yep.
We got these podcasts. We got emails, videos. We try to get as much information out there as possible. You just can't Google it. It just won't show up. No, I haven't checked our stats. I could care less about that, but that's what's out there. But anyways, we want to thank you for listening, and have a great day.
You've reached the end of another Doctor is In podcast with your hosts, Dr. Martin Jr. and Sr. Be sure to catch our next episode, and thanks for listening.